The world outside is growing quiet, and a story is waiting for you in the stillness. Welcome to Midnight Murmurs Studio, your safe harbor from the noise of the day. Find a comfortable place, close your eyes, and let the story begin. Before our story begins, a gentle reminder for your peaceful rest. For the deepest sleep, it's best to keep your phone at a safe distance from your head. So please take a moment to place your phone on a nearby table or chair. And while it's in your hand for this last moment, a quick tap on like and subscribe becomes a quiet signal to us, a soft murmur in the dark that lets us know these stories are a comfort to you. It's what keeps our studio going. Thank you for that. Now, settle in and let the outside world fade away.
In a valley that caught the sun from the moment it rose until the moment it set, the world was painted in shades of gold and amber. This was the Elysian Meadow, a vast rolling expanse of wildflowers, clover, dandelion, thistle, and goldenrod. The air here was different from anywhere else. It was heavy, sweet, and vibrating. It hummed with the collective energy of 1,000,000 tiny wings. It was a sound that was constant, a low-frequency drone that felt less like noise and more like the earth itself purring in contentment. At the edge of this meadow stood a small whitewashed cottage with a roof made of cedar shakes that had turned silver under the sun. Behind the cottage lay the apiary, rows of white wooden boxes, the hives stacked like miniature skyscrapers of a silent city. The air around the hives was busy with traffic, but it was a traffic of purpose, not chaos. The guardian of this city was Beatrice. She was a woman of calm, slow movements. She wore a white linen suit that covered her from neck to ankle, and a wide-brimmed hat with a mesh veil that floated around her face like a cloud. Her hands, usually gloved in soft leather, were gentle enough to brush a bee from a flower without bruising a petal. Beatrice understood the language of the hive. She knew that bees were not aggressive creatures. They were defensive. They only fought when they felt threatened. If you moved with peace, if you breathed with the rhythm of the wind, they would accept you as part of the landscape. She spent her days tending to the queens, checking the brood, and harvesting the surplus liquid gold that they created from the sunlight and the flowers. The dirt road leading to the cottage was rarely used, but on a particularly hot and bright Wednesday afternoon, a cloud of dust heralded an arrival. A silver sedan drove up, looking too sleek and metallic for the soft surroundings. The car stopped, and a man stepped out. His name was Marcus. He was a high-frequency trader from the financial district. For 20 years, his life had been defined by the microsecond. He lived in a world of screaming numbers, flashing red and green lights, and a constant high-pitched ringing in his ears that the doctors called tinnitus, but which he knew was the sound of his own nervous system frying. Marcus stood by his car, shielding his eyes from the sun. He looked out of place. He was wearing a shirt that was buttoned all the way up, despite the heat. He was twitching slightly, his fingers tapping against his thigh as if typing on an invisible keyboard. He had come here on a mandatory sabbatical, ordered by his doctor to find a place where there was no signal. But the silence of the countryside was terrifying to him. It felt empty, and the humming, the constant humming of the meadow, was driving him mad. He thought it was the sound of the market crashing in his head. He walked towards the cottage, swatting at the air around him, fighting invisible enemies. "Hello?" he called out, his voice sharp and jagged. "Is anyone here? I don't know what I need, but this noise, can you turn it off?" Beatrice emerged from the garden. She pulled back her veil. Her face was serene, framed by gray hair that was tied back loosely. She looked at Marcus not with annoyance, but with the clinical appraisal of someone who is used to diagnosing a colony's health. "The noise is not outside, sir," Beatrice said, her voice low and smooth, like honey pouring from a jar. "The meadow sings, it does not scream. The screaming is coming from you." Marcus stared at her. He felt exposed. "I can't stop it," he confessed, pressing his palms against his temples. "My brain, it's buzzing, like a million angry wasps. I can't sleep, I can't think, I just hear the static." "Wasps are hunters," said, walking closer. "They are aggressive. But bees are builders. You have a hive inside your head, yes, but it is disordered. The queen is lost. The workers are frantic. You are vibrating at the wrong frequency." She gestured for him to follow her towards the hives. Marcus recoiled. "Bees? No, I can't. They'll sting. I'm allergic to pain." "Pain is a signal," Beatrice said. "But bees only sting when they sense fear. They smell the pheromones of panic. If you are calm, you are invisible to them. Today, we are not going to fight the bees. We are going to learn from them. We are going to learn how to organize the noise." She led him to a small bench near the tool shed. "Sit. You are vibrating too fast. You are hot. To work the hive, you must cool down." She handed him a beekeeper's suit. It was white, thick cotton canvas. "Put this on. It is not just protection for your body. It is a boundary. When you zip this up, you are sealing yourself inside a safe space. You are creating a barrier between you and the chaos." Marcus took the suit. He pulled it on over his clothes. It was heavy. As he zipped it up and pulled the veil over his face, the world changed. The bright glare of the sun was softened by the mesh. The sound of the wind was muffled. He felt enclosed. He felt contained. For the first time in days, the sensory input was dampened. Beatrice picked up a metal canister with a bellows attached to the side. It looked like an old-fashioned coffee pot. "This is the smoker," she explained. "It is the most important tool. Do you know why we use smoke?" Marcus shook his head, his face hidden behind the mesh. "To choke them?" "No," Beatrice smiled. "To calm them. When bees smell smoke, they think there is a forest fire. Their instinct is not to fight, but to prepare. They gorge themselves on honey to save it. And when a bee is full of honey, it becomes docile. It becomes heavy and slow. The smoke masks the alarm pheromones. It breaks the cycle of panic." She opened the canister. She stuffed it with dried pine needles, old burlap, and a few sprigs of dried lavender. She struck a match. The fire caught the dry fuel. She closed the lid and squeezed the bellows. Puff, puff. A thick, cool, white cloud of smoke drifted out of the nozzle. It didn't smell acrid like a city fire. It smelled aromatic, sweet, and woodsy. It smelled of campfires and comfort. "Breathe it," Beatrice commanded softly, wafting a little smoke towards Marcus. "Not too deep, just taste the air. This is the scent of the pause. This is the scent that tells the panic to stop." Marcus inhaled the scent of the burning pine and lavender. It was a grounding smell. It triggered something primitive in his brain, a signal that said, "Hunker down, be quiet, wait." "We are going to open a hive," Beatrice said, handing him the smoker. "You will control the smoke. You will control the atmosphere. Whenever you feel the buzzing in your head get too loud, you squeeze the bellows. You mask the alarm. You calm the hive." Marcus held the metal can. It was warm in his hands. He watched the white plume drift lazily into the summer air. He realized that for the first time, he had a tool to fight the static. He wasn't helpless. He could create a cloud of calm.
Beatrice and Marcus walked slowly towards the row of white hives. The air grew thicker with every step, vibrating with the collective wing beats of 50,000 insects. Marcus gripped the handle of the smoker tightly. He felt like he was walking into a storm, yet the protective suit created a strange sense of distance, filtering the world into a soft, mesh-covered reality. "Approach from the side," Beatrice instructed quietly. "Never block the front door. That is their runway. We must respect their flight path." They stood beside a tall, weathered hive.
Bees were coming and going in a steady stream, their legs laden with bright yellow and orange pollen baskets. They looked like tiny cargo planes carrying the dust of the sun. "Give them a puff," Beatrice whispered, just at the entrance, a gentle knock to say we are here. Marcus aimed the nozzle. He squeezed the bellows. A cloud of cool, white smoke drifted over the landing board. The scent of the burning pine needles and lavender enveloped them. It was a thick, aromatic fog that seemed to slow time itself. As the smoke touched the bees, their frantic movement changed. They didn't attack. They didn't fly up. Instead, they turned around and marched back into the dark safety of the hive. The pitch of the buzzing dropped from a high whine to a low, contented murmur. "You see," Beatrice said, "you changed the atmosphere. You replaced the alarm with the scent of the earth. The smoke masks the pheromones. It tells them to focus on what matters, protecting the honey. It grounds them, just as deep breathing grounds you." Marcus squeezed the bellows again. The rhythmic puffing motion was soothing. With each squeeze, he felt a little more control over the environment. He wasn't a victim of the noise. He was the conductor of the calm. Beatrice picked up a flat steel tool with a sharp edge, the hive tool. She inserted it under the heavy wooden lid of the box. "Bees seal everything," she explained. "They collect resin from pine trees and mix it with wax to create propolis. It is their glue. It is their medicine. It keeps the hive sterile and airtight. We must break the seal." She pushed down on the tool. With a sharp, distinct cracking sound, the lid popped free. A new scent wafted up, stronger and more complex than the smoke. It was the smell of propolis. It smelled intensely of resin, balsam, amber, and warm wood. It was a medicinal, sticky smell that cleared the sinuses and sharpened the mind. Beatrice lifted the inner cover. Below lay the frames, 10 wooden rectangles packed tightly together, and on top of them a carpet of bees, thousands of them. They moved over each other in a fluid, continuous wave, a living liquid of gold and brown stripes. Marcus flinched instinctively, but the mesh veil held. The bees didn't fly at him. They were busy. They were calm. They were gorging on honey in response to the smoke. "Look at the movement," Beatrice said, pointing a gloved finger. "It looks like chaos to you, doesn't it? But look closer. Every bee has a job. That one is cleaning. That one is fanning her wings to cool the hive. That one is nursing the babies. There is no panic here, Marcus. There is only purpose. Your mind is like this. It is busy, yes. But if you give every thought a job, the chaos turns into industry." Beatrice picked up a flat steel tool with a sharp edge, the hive tool. She inserted it under the heavy wooden lid of the box. "Bees seal everything," she explained. "They collect resin from pine trees and mix it with wax to create propolis. It is their glue. It is their medicine. It keeps the hive sterile and airtight. We must break the seal." She pushed down on the tool. With a sharp, distinct cracking sound, the lid popped free. A new scent wafted up, stronger and more complex than the smoke. It was the smell of propolis. It smelled intensely of resin, balsam, amber, and warm wood. It was a medicinal, sticky smell that cleared the sinuses and sharpened the mind. Beatrice lifted the inner cover. Below lay the frames, 10 wooden rectangles packed tightly together, and on top of them a carpet of bees. Thousands of them. They moved over each other in a fluid, continuous wave, a living liquid of gold and brown stripes. Marcus flinched instinctively, but the mesh veil held. The bees didn't fly at him. They were busy. They were calm. They were gorging on honey in response to the smoke. "Look at the movement," Beatrice said, pointing a gloved finger. "It looks like chaos to you, doesn't it? But look closer. Every bee has a job. That one is cleaning. That one is fanning her wings to cool the hive. That one is nursing the babies. There is no panic here, Marcus. There is only purpose. Your mind is like this. It is busy, yes. But if you give every thought a job, the chaos turns into industry." "We will check the honey," said. "Use your tool. Pry up the second frame from the edge. Move slowly. If you move fast, you startle them. If you move slow, you are just a tree swaying in the wind." Marcus inserted the tool. He loosened the frame. He gripped the wooden tabs with his leather-gloved fingers. He pulled up. He gasped at the weight. The single frame, no bigger than a large book, felt like it was made of lead. "It's heavy," he said, straining to hold it steady. "That is the weight of success," Beatrice smiled. "That is 6 pounds of pure honey, nectar distilled by millions of flights." He held the frame up to the sunlight. The bees walked over his gloves, their tiny feet vibrating against the leather. He felt their warmth. The hive was kept at a constant 95 degrees, the temperature of a human body. It felt like holding a living, breathing organ. The frame was a masterpiece of engineering. The wax comb was built in perfect hexagons, thousands of identical cells angled slightly upward to keep the honey from dripping out. Some cells were open, glistening with fresh nectar. Others were capped with a thin layer of white wax, sealed like treasure chests. "Geometry," Marcus whispered. "It's perfect geometry." "Nature loves order," Beatrice replied. "The hexagon is the most efficient shape in the universe. It uses the least amount of wax to hold the most amount of honey. Your brain wants this order, Marcus. You have been feeding it randomness. Feed it structure, and it will build you something sweet. Marcus stared at the frame. The logic of it appealed to his analytical mind. But it wasn't the cold logic of the stock market. It was a warm, biological logic. It made sense. Beatrice reached out with a gloved finger. She pressed it gently into the surface of the comb, breaking the delicate white wax cappings of a few cells. Honey welled up instantly, thick, golden, and viscous. "Take off your glove," she commanded. Marcus hesitated. "Is it safe?" "The bees are busy," she assured him. "They do not care about your hand. They care about the work." Marcus pulled off his right glove. His hand felt naked and vulnerable in the buzzing air. He reached out. He dipped his finger into the broken cells. The honey was warm, surprising warm. It felt silky and sticky. "Taste it," Beatrice said. "This is not the honey you buy in a plastic bear. This is raw sunlight." Marcus put his finger in his mouth. The flavor exploded on his tongue. It was intensely sweet, but complex. He could taste the flowers, the clover, the dandelion, the hint of mint. It had a floral perfume that traveled up into his nose. It was warm, soothing, and incredibly rich. He closed his eyes. The sweetness seemed to coat his nerves. The high-pitched ringing in his ears, the tinnitus that had plagued him for years, seemed to be dampened by the thick, warm sensation of the honey. "It tastes like summer," Marcus whispered. "It is the memory of the meadow," Beatrice said softly. "The bees have saved the best days for the winter. You must do the same, Marcus. You must store the sweetness. Do not just consume the data. Consume the joy. Store it in your cells. That is what will feed you when the cold comes." Marcus licked the last drop of gold from his finger. He looked at the hive, at the thousands of bees working in unison. He didn't feel afraid anymore. He felt a strange, sticky connection to them. He realized that the buzzing wasn't noise. It was a hum. It was the sound of life happening efficiently and beautifully.
The sun had begun its descent, casting long, stretched shadows across the meadow. The light turned from a bright, harsh white to a deep, syrupy gold, matching the color of the honey in the frame. It was time to close the hive. Beatrice showed Marcus how to lower the heavy wooden frame back into the box. It required immense patience. If he moved too quickly, he would crush the bees crawling on the edges. He had to let gravity do the work, allowing the frame to sink slowly, giving the bees time to move out of the way. It was an exercise in empathy, a silent negotiation between the giant and the insect.
He pushed the frames together gently, closing the gaps. The bees continued their work, unbothered, their humming a steady, low-frequency vibration that Marcus could feel traveling up his arms. He placed the inner cover back on top, then the heavy, telescoping outer lid. He slid it into place with a slow, grinding sound of wood against wood. The darkness was restored to the colony. The city was sealed for the night. "We leave them now," Beatrice whispered. "They have work to do in the dark. They must fan the nectar to remove the water. They must keep the brood warm. They work best when they are left alone." Marcus squeezed the bellows of the smoker one last time, extinguishing the fuel. The last wisp of pine-scented smoke drifted away into the evening air. He felt a strange reluctance to leave. Standing there in the white suit, surrounded by the hum, he felt part of a collective consciousness. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a solitary individual fighting the market. He felt like a small part of a greater, harmonious system. They returned to the cottage, walking through the tall grass that brushed against their legs. Inside the small extraction room at the back of the house, the air was warm and smelled intensely of wax and vanilla. Beatrice brought out a large stainless steel bucket with a gate valve at the bottom. She placed a fine mesh sieve and a layer of cheesecloth over a glass jar. "The honey we harvested must be filtered," she said. "It contains bits of wax, pollen, and propolis. It is messy, just like life. We must let it pass through the mesh to find the clarity." She opened the tap of the large bucket. The honey flowed out. It was a thick, silent column of amber liquid. It piled up on the cheesecloth, moving so slowly it seemed almost solid. Then gravity took over. Tiny, golden threads began to weep through the cloth, dripping into the jar below. Marcus watched the filtration. It was the slowest thing he had ever seen, and yet he couldn't look away. The honey moved at its own pace. It could not be rushed. It pooled in the jar, rising millimeter by millimeter, trapping the light of the setting sun within it. "It takes time to be clear," Beatrice murmured, watching the jar fill. "You want clarity instantly, Marcus. You want the answers now. But the soul is like honey. It is thick. It moves slowly. You must give it time to filter through the cloth of rest." She capped the jar when it was full. It was heavy, warm, and glowing. She tied a piece of twine around the neck and handed it to him. "Take this," she said. "This is not just sugar. This is the essence of 1,000 flowers. It is the energy of the sun, distilled and preserved. When the world feels gray, taste this. Remember the sun.
Marcus removed the beekeeper's suit. He hung it on the peg, leaving the smell of smoke and pine behind. He walked to his car. The evening air was cool now, a refreshing change from the heat of the suit. He opened the car door and sat in the driver's seat. Usually, his hand would have instantly gone to the radio dial or his phone to check the closing bell of the stock market. But tonight, his hands rested on his lap. He looked at the jar of honey sitting on the passenger seat. It looked like a lantern in the dim light. He started the engine. The sound was a low purr. He drove down the dirt road, leaving the meadow behind. But the silence didn't feel empty anymore. It felt full. The high-pitched ringing in his ears, the tinnitus, was still there, faintly, but it no longer sounded like a scream. It sounded like the hive. It sounded like a distant, comforting hum of life. He drove back to the small inn where he was staying. He didn't turn on the news. He didn't check his email. He simply watched the road, his mind replaying the slow, hypnotic movement of the bees on the comb, the way they flowed like water over the wax. He realized that chaos was just a matter of perspective. Up close, the hive was madness, but from a distance, it was a perfect, self-correcting machine. He just needed to step back. In his room, Marcus boiled a kettle of water. He poured it into a mug and opened the jar of honey. The pop of the lid breaking the vacuum seal was a satisfying sound. The scent of the wildflowers filled the small room. He dipped a spoon into the golden liquid. He let a long, thick ribbon of honey fall into the hot water. It dissolved slowly, swirling like amber smoke in the clear liquid. He sat by the window, sipping the warm, sweet drink. It warmed him from the inside out. The taste was complex, floral, earthy, and deeply soothing. It coated his throat and seemed to coat his nerves, calming the electrical storms in his brain. He turned off the lamp. The room was dark, save for the moonlight spilling across the floor. Marcus climbed into bed. The sheets were cool and crisp. He closed his eyes. He didn't see stock tickers. He didn't see red arrows pointing down. He saw the golden hexagons of the honeycomb. He saw the perfect geometry of nature. His breathing slowed, becoming deep and rhythmic. Inhale, peace. Exhale, static. The buzzing in his mind faded away, replaced by the memory of the smoke
the scent of pine and lavender that signaled safety. He felt heavy, sweet, and slow, like the honey moving through the filter. And in the quiet of the night, the man who lived by the microsecond finally drifted into a deep, timeless, and golden sleep, held safely in the hive of his own restored peace.
And so, our story comes to a gentle close. May your mind be calm and your dreams be kind. If you're still listening, we'll be waiting for you here again with another story from Midnight Murmurs Studio. Until then, sleep well.